Okay, we're gonna do a little tropical update. Apparently, I'm a legend among some people in this part of Florida where I live. Apparently, I have predicted hurricanes to the T, except for the last one. I have a video where I actually kind of bombed the last hurricane that hit the West Coast. But apparently, I'm a legend here, and people ask my opinion on hurricanes. So we're just going to put it on the video. The Boiler Mechanic Hurricane Tropical Update. Now, the reason I was a legend in the past is very simple, and I'm just going to say it. I read Jeff Masters' blog. Jeff Masters is no longer with us, but he was the greatest hurricane expert of all time. So back in the day, I used to just pay attention to what Jeff Masters said and basically just told people what he was saying. And I was a legend after that because, I helped people prepare for the hurricane. So we live in this area here. Over here, this is, we live in this area. And OBS Studio really sucks. Now, the local news here in Southeast Florida has been focusing on this shit that's coming off of the coast of Gambia, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, and Guinea. And this is what they would call a tropical disturbance. But what we have up here, north of this area, it looks like dead air to me. So I don't know if this is really going to be a threat. You see how all of the intertropical convergence zone is kind of curving down here. So you got like a big area. It's a broad trough of low pressure, but it's basically dead air, and it's pushing everything south. Okay, so people are tripping. The meteorologists are tripping, and they're saying that this disturbance is gonna, this is the one, because why is that? Why are they tripping? I'll tell you why they're tripping. Because this disturbance is very close to Cape Verde. But the problem is that this broad trough of low pressure here is going to interfere with the circulation of these little disturbances, probably fizzle them out and kind of like push them south. I would say just generally interfere with them. So the local news is trying to fearmonger over these these disturbances. I don't think these disturbances are a big problem right now. We have some big area of dead air over here, and it's just not going to let anything really form and circulate and get that tight circulation necessary to create a hurricane. So, the thing about it is that if you want a storm to hit Southeast Florida, it pretty much has to come out of this area to the Cape Verde area. If it's too far south, it's never going to hit South Florida unless there is some weird tropical disturbance going on here. Now, we have this nasty high pressure system out here in the Atlantic, and it's a very strong high pressure system, and we're feeling it over here in Florida. This high pressure is extending all the way over here to Florida, so everything is going to be directed south of Florida until this high pressure, which is a very broad high pressure system, until that moves north a little bit. You're not going to see anything get close to South Florida. So as far as South Florida is concerned, as it stands now, at this moment, I don't see any reason why there should be a concern. You know, the local news here, they're going to fearmonger over it. They need ratings. We understand that. A boiler mechanic doesn't care about ratings. Boiler mechanic just says it like it is. So you can see here, looking at the wind stations, that generally speaking, the trend is a broad high pressure system. Now, I think I have it somewhere here. Let me pause it for a second. So here we have a tweet from one of the greatest, the best meteorologists in the world, the European weather agency, whatever they call themselves, the Euros. The Euros have the best weather modeling. And here's a tweet about El Nino. So we are experiencing right now an El Nino event. So let's talk about El Nino. I'll tell you a short history. El Nino started, the idea or the concept of El Nino started with fishermen off the coast of Peru in like the 18th or 19th century. And they started noticing every 7 years, like they weren't catching as many fish, basically, right? And they noticed that the water was warmer, and that's what fishermen do. Fishermen pay attention to these things. I've been a fisherman myself. So we pay attention to the winds, the water temperature, all this. And the fishermen in Peru noticed this pattern. It seemed to happen every so often. And they started to call it El Nino. And that's because, at this point, this is like 19th century, I think. Actually, but not 18th century. It's probably 19th century. These are Catholicized natives, basically, and they are attributing the phenomenon to the baby El Nino, the baby. It's like Christ, and they just made a new god in their minds, and it was El Nino, the baby Christ, basically the baby Jesus, and it wasn't good for them because they couldn't fish. The fishing sucked at this time, and so they hated it, but they called it the baby Jesus, basically. So ask them why they did that. I don't know. But the thing about El Nino is it's such an important part of the world's climate. And when El Nino happens, it basically changes the entire world's weather patterns. And it does it because you have this huge area where the water just gets super warm. And nobody understands why it does that. The Hawaiians, however, they understood when El Nino was going to happen. For thousands of years, they were able to predict it and use it to sail, across the ocean. The Hawaiians were able to predict El Nino, and then they would use El Nino as a means to sail to like over here to these islands and do their luau's, where they would exchange wives and do stuff like that. So El Nino is a very interesting phenomenon, and no scientist can really. I have not seen a real explanation for why El Nino happens. So why is El Nino important to those of us in Southeast Florida who are constantly paranoid about hurricanes? Well, the reason El Nino is important is because during El Nino years, generally, tropical activity is very subdued in the Atlantic Basin. So the Atlantic Basin is the part of the ocean we're concerned with as people who live in South Florida. Basically, the Atlantic Basin is this area right here. So we're concerned with that. So during an El Nino year, it's there are usually less hurricanes and less severe hurricanes. Regardless of how hot the water is or how hot the air is, it doesn't matter because there are forces happening beyond our understanding as human beings. We don't understand our planet yet, in other words. And what I see happening here, I see a broad trough of low pressure. Maybe it's a mid-level low pressure trough. It looks like a mid-leveler. It's shearing the surface level storms that are coming off the coast. So the local news is making a big deal about this shit, right? This broad this broad mid or upper level trough of low pressure is going to destroy all this shit. So people in South Florida don't have to worry yet. Keep an eye on this low level trough. So when we say that hurricanes are less likely in El Nino years, doesn't mean they're impossible. Hurricane Andrew might have been in an El Nino year, I think. It certainly was in a very inactive year in terms of hurricane activity. Right now in southeast Florida, we have this broad level. The Bermuda High is very strong, and it is really subduing the air in South Florida all the way over here. So that in a La Nina year, this would be a problem because there would be so many hurricanes, it would funnel them straight into us. But in El Nino year, for some reason that nobody truly understands, the hurricane activity is subdued. And I'm just really tripping over this upper level low here that is just swirling around, and it's really playing havoc on these tropical disturbances, and it's turning them to mush. So as long as this upper level low stays here, we should be good. There's nothing that's going to make it through that fucking upper level low. Nothing. You can see how everything curves around it, like it's trying to avoid it. So I would say for now we're good. The news programs are trying to fearmonger over this shit. I would say calm down. It's not a big deal. Take it down 1,000. Go out to the beach and paddleboard and go fishing and enjoy your life. You don't have to buy plywood yet. I'll let you know when you have to buy plywood, because I'm going to be buying plywood. I'm not going to let you know until I've already bought the plywood, by the way. But I'll let you know right after that. I'm out.